Well, you know, you are an interesting bloke. We were just talking off camera. Oh, sorry, I've got to put that there. Product placement.
Are you sponsored by Coconut?
Yeah. I actually asked the lad in there, I said, excuse me, mate, have you got any CBD drinks by Trip? And he went, what?
You say what?
He looked at me like I was a drug addict. I was like, you know, like the CBD drinks, like Trip or goes loads on me. He's like, no, but I've just realised, I don't know, maybe someone can help me, but do Marks and Spencer's only sell Marks and Spencer's stuff? No wonder he didn't know what the fuck I was on about.
I did see Coca-Cola in there, so it's not all.
Who doesn't sell Coca-Cola? One of the things we were just talking about, information and everything that's going to kill you, yada, yada, yada. We started talking about the vaccine.
Don't get him started on the vaccine.
No. But last time we spoke to you, we touched on the army and the military.
In my case, it was the RAF.
The RAF,
the Air Force.
Okay. The RAF. Bobsledding.
Yeah.
You were on the Cool Runnings team, the Jamaica. I didn't realise you had a touch of Jamaican in you.
I've met the Jamaican bobsleigh team.
No way.
They are not like Cool Runnings.
Sanka.
Didn't unfortunately meet Sanka, no.
What about Darius?
Darius?
What about Yul Brenner?
No, I didn't meet Yul Brenner.
You didn't meet him that night, did you? In that bar when they had that big fight over at the Winter Olympics?
I have been to the bar.
No way.
Yeah.
Mate.
I've been to that bar.
Mate, Mark, mate. He's been to the bar.
I got so drunk in that bar that I had a major problem the next day because we were due to drive to Utah, which is 1,000 miles, and I forgot my passport. I was so hungover.
Wow, how old are you?
29-ish, I guess.
So what did you do for the bobsled team? You weren't the brake man, were you?
No, unfortunately they wouldn't. Well, they let me in a bobsleigh a couple of times, just to experience it. But I was I was basically like a sponsored kind of sports analyst. So the company that my dad then was kind of the chairman of, basically sponsored the team with me for a couple of years, provided a load of like cool gadgets and tech, which were kind of cutting edge at the time. Sort of stuff that you wouldn't even think twice about now. Video transmission across kind of short distances and stuff that any mobile phone can do now. But in 08,
God, back in the day,
in 08, there was no way to transmit video very easily. You had to have like kind of satellites and helicopters and stuff. So the tech we were using was kind of surveillance equipment. That was what my father's company was doing.
Surveillance.
Yeah, surveillance for various agencies. And had the technology to do video analysis, which was really sort of high tech. You could kind of identify people in video, which it was a brand new piece of technology. Fascinating science, and some real boffins who'd invented it.
Is that your background?
Well,
what is your background? Because you know a lot. I mean, I know we don't talk about what you do, and that's fine. But you're an engineer. But I think of engineers like building bridges or something.
Yeah, I was having this conversation yesterday with somebody about different countries look at engineers very differently. So in France, you can't call yourself an engineer unless you've been to one of 3 universities and got a specific degree at a specific level.
Really?
In England and UK, you can call yourself an engineer to do anything. Everything from emptying Coke can machines to designing helicopters.
Oh, right. The word engineer itself.
The word engineer.
In France, they don't let you use that word.
It's a bit like champagne. It's a protected term. You can't call yourself an engineer unless you've been through their process of going to university, learning the degrees, doing the specific tests.
So are you a Coke can engineer or are you an actual engineer?
Probably a bit of both, mate. I mean, essentially, I didn't do your traditional go to university, kind of A-levels university and onwards and onwards and onwards. I had a real issue with education. I wasn't kind of a very good fit for education in UK. And throat's cracking. I went to my A-levels, lost my way, left it, and really left myself with very few options. I could have gone and gone on an apprenticeship or something, but nothing really fitted, and so I joined the military. And that's how I ended up in the RAF. So I had a natural inclination towards the Air Force because I'd been an air cadet. My dad was in the RAF and all of his friends were in the RAF. And, it was a natural fit. I understood it, let's say. And I looked at it and said, well, okay, how can I resolve this lack of education? How can I give myself a career that's going to have some sort of go forward? How can I go and play sport around the world? How can I do these things?
Yeah.
And I identified that my dad had a great time in the RAF. He'd been all over the world and seen amazing things. And I figured that I could recreate some of that for myself. So that's how I ended up as an RAF airframe technician. So that was like fixing the main parts of airplanes, basically.
Why? Do you do that like on site?
Yeah.
Like would you go on a helicopter on like a mission?
Not in terms of, that's a hard thing to answer, but for most aircraft technicians, we would basically be based in the UK usually, or you could be based on other bases around the world. You would maintain, repair, and kind of keep the aircraft flying, refuel them, keep them ticking over, basically check them after they've been flying, make sure that everything was good, send them off on their way for another mission. Usually if it's a single engine fighter jet, off they'd go and do a mission, and then they'd come back and then you'd fix it if it was broken, or you'd refuel it and rearm it and send it back on its way. For me, I was working mostly on large transport aircraft, particularly a Hercules aircraft, and then later on the Puma helicopter, which was so basically I was more the kind of engineer that kept the buses going.
Right.
So that the heartbeat of the military is logistics. So
right.
if you want to fight a war, you got to get the stuff that you need to get from one place to another, and that's where logistics aircraft come in.
Especially when you think about it, you don't really think when you think about it. You don't think about that. Yeah, you're going to go somewhere and be in war. You got to get shit there, aren't you?
Yeah, you want to go to Afghanistan and invade it and create the situation that they did. You got to take thousands of tons of stuff with you, and even build things when you get there. So you need to take the building materials.
How big are them planes?
They're sizable, a couple of 100 foot long and 25 foot
fly?
wide.
It just boggles my brain that you can fly tanks.
Yeah. I've seen all kinds of things in the back of aircraft, everything from giant boats. I've seen helicopters in the back of Herculeses. I've offloaded like para drops. So you basically throw things out the back of the aircraft with a parachute on, heavy kind of logistic items like Jeeps and, Land Rovers as they are, small tanks.
Do you know what I saw on Facebook?
Go on.
I saw, apparently it's a true thing. Somebody was recalled in a plane crash, basically.
Right.
It was an army thing that went in America, and they said, what the story was that someone linked the news to it. They hadn't hooked the cargo properly, like tanks or something.
It happens.
And it literally just went, like they couldn't control it. Obviously, it all moved around in there, and it just nosedived.
Yeah, like center of gravity, it's called C of G. It's one of the most important things that pilots and the aircraft engineers would take care of, because if you're loading an aircraft full of people and stuff, heavy things, fuel, could be bombs, could be anything, you need to know where that is on the relation to the center of the aircraft. And because an aircraft flies on some basic principles, I don't want to go into all that.
No, I just quickly want to, what is the basic, because I don't like flying.
Imagine a seesaw.
I don't like flying, right?
Yeah,
so let's just help me out with this, because some bloke said, I met a pilot once, and he said, if you understand how flying works, you probably wouldn't be afraid of flying.
No.
Because it's an exact science. He said, I was really afraid of flying, so I took flying lessons. You obviously had a wealthy family, I imagine.
Yeah, of course.
He said, and then I became a pilot. You're like, well, I'm not going to go take flying lessons necessarily. But I'm like, sometimes you sit there and you think, for me, like if I've got tanks, I'm like, surely that shouldn't fly. So sometimes I'm on a plane, I fly. I'm one of them people. I'm not going to sit and have a panic attack and a meltdown. But if you went, do you want to fly? You probably could get there another way. I might go.
I'll think about it.
I'd probably think about going the other way.
I mean,
So what is it? The basics. Listen, give me the bumper, not the bumper sticker. The sticky note, the sticky note of how the fuck things fly.
For an aircraft with wings, so your normal plane that you get on holiday and go to Malaga.
Yeah, off we go. Yeah. Welcome to today's Captain.
Welcome to
it's Captain Matt Wilks speaking.
This is Captain Matthew Wilks. Please,
center of gravity is in place.
Fasten your seatbelts. I've just turned on the automatic stewardess. No, basically, you've got two or more engines. That provides thrust. And what that does is it forces the aircraft to go forward. So basic principles, if you knew about that.
Yeah.
And then the wing that's on the side of the aircraft, the thing that sticks out and that's got the engines attached to it, is essentially like a curved metal shape,
right,
which generates lift. So by making it go through the air, it generates lift. So you'll go vertically because the air pressure underneath essentially
lifts.
You reduce the air pressure on the top of the wing and you increase the air pressure on the bottom of the wing.
Buoyancy.
Yeah, it's kind of a buoyancy. And the faster you go, the more lift is generated. And eventually you reach a point where the lift is more than the weight of the airplane and she takes off.
And then when you're flying up at we are cruising at 40,000
feet, yeah.
Yeah, is that it?
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, it can go up to 50,000. Yeah.
Right. That is like, if the engine stopped working,
Yeah.
what would happen?
Well, you
wouldn't just drop out the sky.
No, for the most part, no. What would happen is basically the engines provide forward thrust, which keeps you in a stable flight pattern. You've got the lift being generated and everything's good and hunky-dory. Plus the engines do other things. They power the controls so you can turn. They power the electrics, the oxygen systems. They power,
So they power all that as well.
They power everything. Those engines are pretty vital to the enterprise. If they go, you're in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, like you could land probably.
No, not always.
Ah, right. You're not making me less scared. You're not making me less scared.
Well, for the most part, commercial aircraft can fly with reduced engine thrust. Right. I mean, we're getting into some technical sort of stuff.
No,
here.
I like. It's my podcast. I talk about what I like.
You can talk about what you like,
and I'm interested in this.
Any aviation safety guy is going to cripple me with like the details of what I've just explained, but I'm keeping it at a very simple level. You don't
sound like me now. We're not going to get into the neuroscience of this, so I'm going to simplify it. So if you're a clever fucker listening to me,
let me put it this way.
I know the clever shit, but I'm simplifying it.
Yeah, let me put it this way. If you're flying along and you lose your engines, you're in a bit of bother because you're either going to lose the thrust that's keeping the lift going.
The buoyancy, right? But
you do have gravity on your side. So if you're up at 40,000 feet, you can glide as long as you've got the power to control your surfaces on your aircraft. So you can glide for a fairly long distance. I mean, people have sort of had glide paths that were very, very long. And for the most part, the emergency systems on the aircraft will keep the aircraft running if you had engine failure. Now, that's not to say that you're in a great place. If you don't get those engines to restart, then yeah, you're in trouble because you haven't got enough thrust to keep you flying.
Right.
And at some point, the equation will run out of energy in one way. Either the lift is going to run out or you're going to cause a situation with your controls. But for the most part, aviation safety is one of my skill sets because that's what I did for 10 years.
I was going to say, yeah. So why is flying so safe? Because someone says to you, don't be worried about flying. You're more likely to die. You know.
Yeah.
Why
getting
is
eaten
it
by
so
a crocodile. There's a couple of reasons, but the primary reason is that companies that make planes don't want to go out of business.
Right.
So if you think about aviation from the Wright brothers in the 1900s right the way through to today, it's been a race to make the fastest, the sleekest, the most sexy aircraft, the one that carry the most, the ones that do the most things. And then passenger flight became a really kind of like good thing for the economy. People were going all over the world. Tourism kind of was invented by after that. Obviously people were going around on boats, but took 20 days to get to New York. It's not much fun when you can go on Concorde and it takes 3 hours. So aviation safety started when planes started crashing. Really the very early, pioneering aircraft. If you think about the first jet passenger aircraft, it's called the Comet. That was designed by very, very clever engineers, but who didn't know about making aircraft go really fast. They were able to design it, but they didn't know some of the stuff we now know.
Right.
And they had some really bad crashes in the early days of that aviation because it was kind of pioneering. Yeah. So they realized, for instance, one little detail, they had square windows on the aircraft. Well, square windows, they didn't understand that on aircraft that fly at certain speeds, they would get a problem with the fuselage and it would basically crack. And then the next thing you know, the window would blow out and everybody would be done.
Just because of a square window?
Square windows.
Surely that's only something you can...
You'll never see a square window on an airplane.
If I do, I'm getting off.
Always be round.
I'm going to get off, Mike.
If you do, you've gone back to 1968.
Yeah. Mate, you aren't winding that propeller with square windows. I'm out of it. But surely that's something you can only know. Because they couldn't have predicted that. Surely they must go, we keep crashing. Is it the window? Is it because it's square?
Well, this is it. What's happened is, so through the various crashes that happen, so that's the real life experience of the pilots and the people that have passed away, unfortunately. They've been the pioneers in this. And the aviation industry understood that if it was to continue and to continue growing,
people had to stop fucking dying.
People had to stop dying. Yeah. And we're still talking about, in living memory here. If you think back to the 90s, there were very, very high profile crashes at air shows and we lost loads of aircraft quite regularly. It was getting better, but it was still a regular occurrence to hear about a plane that had hit a mountain and 500 people had died because planes got huge. 747 can carry 300 people. And so lots of people were dying, lots of people were getting sued. And, the natural reaction of these companies was, well, we've got to improve our safety here. How are we going to do that? And so they got together as a body of companies and they put in place some fantastic legislation, essentially. They legalized themselves. And so they worked with people who were the real experts in the industry. And they were like, right, how do we make this safer? Well, we cooperate. So we all follow the same rules.
So we almost like standardize. Yeah. We share our information.
We share information. So if
a
a crash happens, we've got these agencies, and each country has their own crash, basically an agency that deals with that stuff, an aviation authority. And they would make sure that anything that had been learned from a crash. So let's say, there was an aircraft famously that the back end fell off.
I was laughing, but
but people died.
Yes, I say you don't laugh. Yeah,
several hundred people died.
It's like not what you want to see on an airplane. Like the back fell off.
The back fell off, and what that came from was the aircraft had taken off from an airfield with a fairly inexperienced pilot, and he'd basically over-rotated on takeoff and bumped to the bottom of the aircraft. And so they'd landed quickly and they fixed it and they repaired the bulkhead, which is like the pressure end of the aircraft that keeps it all pressurized. And nobody thought any more of it because it was fixed. What they didn't know at the time was that there was a few micro cracks in that metal. And after years and years and years and years, the micro cracks grew to bigger cracks. And then basically the bulkhead failed and that pressure was released quickly, a bit like a can kind of crushing.
And it popped off.
And the back end of the airplane
and
fell
the whole airplane.
Even though it was safe to fly because nobody could have predicted this.
That's an example, though. We've been talking about information a lot.
Yeah.
But how sharing of information has made everything better.
Aviation is the safest form of transport purely because of that communication.
Where else could that improve our lives, I wonder? Where people just went, tell you what, let's just open source everything. Where would that improve everything?
You could transpose it onto everything. So imagine every hospital in the world was an interconnected system of benign organizations that all operated under similar standards with similar, beliefs, morals, whatever it might be. They shared their information. So how many people did we kill this year? 60. How many mistakes were made? Well, actually, 10 of those just died. We couldn't stop it. But maybe 10 of those people could have been saved because the hospital up the road
has had that problem and adjusted and learned.
It can be as simple.
That's an engineering mindset, isn't it?
It can be as simple as one doctor, one person in authority, making a change to the way they operate that basically fundamentally changes the game. And so that's where your big data can come in. That's where your systems can come in. And cooperation across and communication's vital.
You got to think that's why things like business masterminds, good ones, work.
Yeah.
Where I'm in a business mastermind where you go and you share what's working openly. Or, no, we've had that problem.
Yeah.
What you're having, that drop-off rate there, we had, what we did to solve that problem? We plugged this, and this. Yeah. Why, did you? Yeah. It's this kind of hive. Is it hive?
It's a hive, yeah. It's a collective that is working for the common good.
But the difference in aviation is things are standardized, like we're all working off the same. So it's a bit like me saying, right, I want to change the mental health of the world. I'm going to put in place 50 exact unbreakable paths.
Principles, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, that we're all going to run off. And we're all going to work through the same system. And we're all going to share we're all going to work and bounce back from the feedback.
Yeah. What works, what doesn't.
Standardized. Whereas obviously that's not the case in something like mental health, is it? You can't they're not standardized where everyone's sharing information.
Well, I suppose it depends on what level you look at it, because individually you're meeting 500, 600, 700 people a year, all new to you. You've never met before. They've all got their specific challenges, but there's commonality across.
Huge. People think it's all unique, but there's commonalities. Yeah.
Now, human brain, massively complex. You're not going to dig into all of that straight away, but that their problems are probably universal.
Yep.
You could probably break it down into 20 groups of problems, and then from there another 100 groups of sub-problems.
Yep.
And from each one of those you could identify common paths that would fix those problems, or not fix them, but you know what I mean. So that's an engineer's mind going, right, I can see a problem and I can see that if we analyze this a bit, we might come out with a solution. Now, human emotions, complicated thing, so you're not going to...
Not necessarily, though. We like to say it's really complicated. But what you've just described is kind of what we did with the path, right?
Yeah. And
I standardized a path.
That's why I liked the path, because looking at the path, I could see that there were breakdowns in there. I understand why you have got me doing this. I might not like it. I don't like writing down all the shit that makes me feel unhappy. I don't like writing down all the things I don't understand about myself.
It was a standardized way of dealing with progression, actually, not to bore, but it was like, okay, most people have an initial problem. They got no foundation across their physical, mental, emotional well-being.
Yeah.
But when people create a foundation, very often they then struggle to, you deal with enough people where they struggle to integrate this foundation into their family and their life.
Yeah, it's hard to transpose, isn't it?
They want to try and tell everyone how to live, or people just don't get, there's this element where you need to go from building a foundation yourself to improving your external skills of communication. So we went from, we need a different level, foundation, lighthouse.
Yeah, because, tugboat and lighthouse is a great analogy. I still say this to my kids all the time.
Yeah, and then we went, there's needs to be a level beyond that where someone needs to master these principles. And it's actually advanced steps like shadow work, dealing with your shadow, dealing with different things. So stuff you wouldn't do early on in the path, but you'd certainly do later on in the path. And it was
you need the mental space to be able to understand that there's other things going on. And when you're in that first bit of a challenge, you're not in the space to understand all the nuances. And as you go through your path, you deal with some of the basics, you get rid of some of the noise, you get rid of the, I'm not sleeping, I'm not waking up in the morning and drinking some water, I'm still smoking 40 cigarettes every 8 hours. You get rid of those things, or you start to reduce them and get control over them. And all of a sudden you've got this capacity to be able to go, actually there's other things that I can optimize here.
And it was that I'm so, like I always talk about a lot, it's our main thing, but I used to say on like big group lives, like it sounds a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Where I almost say like, so the data we've got coming back, it almost feels a bit like, that's so unpersonal, so inhumane. But it's like, no, but there is data. We're tracking data points all the time. The speed of somebody working through the path, where people drop off the path, where people stop, where do they stop interacting, where their points are not being scored. And you can tell a huge amount. Like you said in one of the previous episodes, macro data, you got to be careful, but it does give you a good idea of like, why does every fucker really struggle there?
Yeah, why? Well, like I think the first.
And then you dig in and find there's a lot of personal things. You might go, actually, they've just got divorced. That really tripped them up there. But sometimes actually, let's ask those people, why are you struggling? I just can't. Actually, I can't. You say, God, you just can't do that task because of some illness or some disability. We need to adjust. So the macro does help you, but I don't think I'll stop. I write this a lot in my journal until I want the ability for somebody, anyone in the world, to come into our app and follow a step-by-step path that will lead them to a really solid foundation of performance. I don't think that'll be my mission in life. I honestly think it can be a path that you go, okay, I don't need to do anything other than follow this path, because you've still got autonomy through the path. You can still choose. You've been there. What do you want to do? That or that. There is autonomy throughout it. But it's almost like a guide rope that you can go, I don't know what to do. People say that. It's like, well, do that next step. And we've got the data. So I know at each checkpoint, the reduction in the increase in certain things. Some people even track their heart rate variability and you'll watch it just rocket throughout the whole course. I'm on a bit of a passionate rant now, but I just think it can be much more simple than this. Go off and search and go to this service. Now, mental health is very different to mental illness, but general public is like, I'm just fucking stressed and anxious and overwhelmed. Like, well, that is a standardized path, really.
Yeah. Anybody, whether you're happy, sad, unhappy, halfway between, have problems, don't have problems, everybody that if they came through that pathway, no matter what starting point they were at, they would always see an improvement.
Yeah.
And that is that's what's good about it.
I know it led me to, the thing that led me into this was this, people say, well, does your stuff work? And I wanted, like, you can share stories and the emotional element, and that's important. But I wanted to be able to say, do you know 500 people completed level 1?
Yeah.
500. Do they, here they all are.
No,
they all are.
Yeah, I'm going to caution you and say that I'll challenge you essentially.
Yeah, go on.
The pathway. I mean, I struggled with the pathway.
Yeah,
really badly. I mean, I went to level 1 and I was working my way to level 2, and I hit this like iceberg of like, I suppose, whoa, where I was like, I just can't do it. I can't do this next bit. And you can work through it. And I obviously had loads of extra challenge thrown at me at that point. But I'd reached level 2 just as my health went wrong.
Yeah.
And so I had all these skills I'd learned in level 1, and they probably kept me alive, if I'm honest.
Well, that's good to know.
I give a lot of credit to Limitless for that as well, because David give me a fantastic foundation to then come and join you guys and then, and go through the pathway. And if I hadn't got those skills, if I hadn't learned the things I learned, I probably would have either ended my life or ended up in a worse position now. I would have given up, and giving up is as good as dying, really, to me.
Right.
So, I think whatever you do, if you can go through, if you can be guided by a lot of human experience, and that's what the Unbreakable bit sort of gives you, I suppose, is that you've got all these experiences, you've developed a system that identifies it, and you can follow that pathway without any. It's not onerous. The more you put in, the more you get out of it. Like anything, like if you're going to do training, you always want to put as much as you can in. But I had my real struggles with it. As you go through, you get challenged.
Yeah.
Because that's the most important thing about, particularly this approach. You're not saying to me, Matt, drink 4 liters of water. Matt, walk 10 miles tomorrow. Matt, do this. Matt, do that. Matt, do the other. You're given the general guidance of, right, it's probably a smart thing for you to hydrate. It's a smart thing for you to, and here's why. And it's a smart thing for you to think in these ways and to challenge your perceptions and beliefs and to put in place these habits which might serve you better. Good sleep, good rest, the stacks that help you get across problems. Those are the things that are valuable. And in the meantime, you're on a bit of a challenging pathway. You got to get over that and just keep working through it. But yeah, so it's definitely a case of, it's like if you ever go on a journey like many of us have, hundreds of people I've met through Unbreakable and through Limitless and through others, there's a commonality with everybody in that they start up, their starting point is not where they end up 6 months later.
No.
It's completely different.
I thought you were going to ask me a question during that. You were going to say the challenge I've got for you.
Well, I wanted to challenge the let's say, maybe not yourself, but I wanted to challenge this belief that you can just follow a process and all of a sudden everything's going to be great.
Oh, God, no.
It's not that at all.
The end, it's going to be hard throughout. It's the end, isn't it? The end result.
And the thing is, it might even lead you to the point where it's still hard. That's kind of where I am now. It's still hard every day to motivate myself to rehab, motivate myself to feel more positive than I would naturally feel.
Yeah.
So, there's no golden ticket to success, sort of sanity, let's say.
Exactly that. We're not saying that.
No,
I think this is actually, but this brings about something that we battle with all the time. I was saying to Celeste, who goes through this with me, I was like, there's a big sticking point here on this path. You think it's like a course. If you look at it, it's a course. It's like if you were on a course, if you went, I want to get qualified in something, you'd hope you'd go through a structured kind of course. You wouldn't be like, well, just do what you like.
Scattergun, do what you like.
And if you go to a gym, you'd hope you'd followed a progressive training program, which is what the path is, a progressive training program. But there's that ethical thing, not ethical, where you go, yeah, everyone's stuck there. Why is that? Because it's hard. Yeah.
So
we could make that easier.
Can we break it down maybe?
Right. But would that prepare somebody for life? It's like, it's got to be hard in places because your skill level is as good as your training. If your training is really fucking easy, you aren't that skilled.
The growth comes from the challenge, doesn't it?
Yeah, which is why you're like, no, it is going to be hard, that section, but it's got to stay there.
There's been bits of it.
On the other side of it is the lesson, is the growth. Yeah. And the other thing we always say, I always not toy with, I'm like, could somebody do it on their own with no community? And you're like, probably not. Not at this point, because I learned a language through Duolingo, or started learning a language. And I know if I had a human to say, hang on a minute, I'm just struggling with this, I would have adhered to it much more than just the gamification of an app, if that makes sense. So at the minute, we're like, we have to keep a human there.
Well, that's funny enough what we were talking about earlier with AI, because it's very difficult to afford a human being to teach you anything. We're getting zapped. It's hard to afford a human to teach you something because it's very expensive.
Yeah.
Where AI might come in for that kind of thing.
Do you think AI could ever help a human being integrate human behavior?
I think in
It's
AI...
a big question, I know.
Yeah, it's a huge question.
Because we were talking about, could AI fit a fucking tap for you? Is it ever going to? Is it going to be economically viable to build something that could fit a tap? I don't know, because you are much more articulate in this conversation. So I was thinking, everyone in the coaching industry, when AI came out, was like, oh my God, AI is going to replace coaching. It's like, are you confusing information with coaching? Because all the information can be fine, but that person's got to learn how to practically integrate that in there. But there is virtual therapists. There is AI.
Yeah.
I read a study on that, but one of the things that it didn't go through well was because AI couldn't show
an emotion,
a facial expression, which is, we're having a conversation. I can see when you're smiling, I'm smiling, we're laughing. We've got that.
Yeah.
But she couldn't give it. But will AI be able to do that?
Yeah, it already can. There are already conversations going on, and it's a regular thing. There are companies who are doing this for big tech who are creating avatars of humans, and it's already the case that you can have a conversation with AI and you probably wouldn't know. And
for fucking hell.
It absolutely terrifies you. And
Mark's has got this bit of the camera.
Yeah. No, it really is. It's here now. I think what a lot of even people like Elon Musk, you could argue he's a bit of a controversial character.
I actually wonder what you were going to say then for a minute. You could argue he's a bit of a controversial character.
He's a controversial character. But, for all of his faults, and he is obviously a challenging character, his perception of AI, he's got a lot of fear around it, but he's still developing humanoid robots. And you look at the progress they've made on humanoid robots now. If you see the things that they can do now compared to 2 years ago, it is staggering.
Has it moved on from the robot Rocky ad for Paulie?
Quite a bit, yeah.
Do you remember that one?
Yeah. I am a robot. I mean, I was working in a place that had robotic guards. So if you've ever seen the dog-like robots that you see sometimes on the internet, I'll show you later. But you've got basically 4-legged robots that walk around the perimeter of installations, and they monitor, and they can use heat detection and sound detection. And
I am so unaware of this world.
That's happening now, mate. I mean, that's the today.
I'm so unaware of this world.
Like, I mean, if you look,
it still blows my mind that I can record. That I learned how to screen record my phone.
Yeah.
In fact, my mate, it blew his mind. I don't know, Mark might know this. Might not know this, but he was like, I got to stop leaving a message now. My finger hurts on WhatsApp. I was like, swipe it up, you dickhead. You can talk as long as you want. I mean, his name's Mark.
Game changer.
I got my 15 fucking minute voice messages now. He's like, this is amazing. I don't think he's ready to hear about AI robot avatars.
I mean, I know people who work in the AI industry, and they are pragmatic about it because they've seen the growth of it as we've gone through the last few years, and it has been exponential because once you open the genie, then once the genie's out of the bottle, people are going to want to exploit it. Big firms are making huge decisions about workforces, for instance. If you run a call center and it costs you a lot of money to run that call center, and you could have a robot answer 98% of the questions and you only need 10% of the staff.
Where does that become in society, though? This is just me, thinking, if I go, fucking hell, I don't need anyone. So no one's got any work. Who buys my stuff that I'm selling? Do I not need to employ people so people have money so people can buy my wares? Is that what we'd say?
We're in an interesting transition period between the old and the new. We're basically still living World War II, post-World War II lives. We get up, we go to work, we do our work, we come home, we eat, sleep, and repeat, essentially. Who knows what the next transition period is going to look like? Because if you're not going to work 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, and you're not spending the money you earn from that work, there's huge arguments about like universal incomes and things like that, because there are money generating processes in governments. You can oil and gas and nuclear and all that energy. Where's that value transfer going and coming to and from? And, it could be that we all end up in a sort of Star Trek style universe where everybody's hunky-dory and, whether you're the janitor or whether you're the guy that Jean-Luc Picard, everyone's the same.
And everyone gets the same money.
Yeah.
And robots do most of our shit.
There's no need for money because there's no differential between the the person that does X thing or Y thing.
God, I can't imagine that world. But
It's
I
probably
talk
not
about
true.
limited, where you reach ceilings in your thinking.
Yeah.
That is a ceiling in my thinking where I go, I just can't imagine people not going to work, earning their own level of income, and going about life in some similar fashion.
You change your value proposition. So at the moment we earn money so we can buy food and water and shelter. We do those things for immediate purposes, and then we in the West and a lot of other countries have the luxury of being able to spend our money on leisure. That's a relatively modern thing.
Yeah, I suppose when you think about it.
People didn't really have leisure, 100 years ago.
Leisure.
They didn't really have it. They worked and they were given a day off if they were lucky, and most of them died in the yoke. They kind of they were commodities. We've changed a bit since those days, but we're still commodities to those companies and to those entities. And and what you're talking about with a Star Trek style world is an altruistic world. So it's not communism as in nobody owns anything.
Yeah.
It's more about your worth, your value proposition is that you're working towards a common good. And I suppose if we could shift to that,
Like group flow.
yeah, it'd be a massive group
Shared
flow.
goal.
If everybody was on the same page and it was all about furthering humanity, every day you woke up in the morning with this burning passion to make the world a better place.
Do you know what this topic's turned into? It's
Philosophy.
turned into group flow.
Yeah.
When you think about that, how did aviation, you say aviation's the safest because there's set in stone legislation.
Yep.
Everyone works together for the greater good of aircraft safety.
Yeah. And it's a common good because not only does it make confidence in air travel much better.
So it's got a corporate benefit.
There's a corporate
but it's
benefit.
also, there's a human benefit to that, isn't
Hugely,
there?
yeah.
We want to do good.
There's probably,
We don't want to kill people.
There's probably several million people that exist now because their parents and grandparents weren't killed in aviation accidents.
Exactly.
It's a common
So
good.
shared goals, but you're also saying that with what we just spoke about.
Yeah.
AI, surely if we all got on the same page and had this common...
Yeah. If we can harness it for the greater good.
The greater good of humanity.
The greater good.
Maybe sometimes not the greater good of an individual set.
I watched Hot Fuzz last night, so I'm kind of the greater good.
It's all murder around here.
We'll be up to our nuts in crusty jugglers.
Anything else from that film? I'm trying to think.
I could just keep going.
I'm trying to think of anything we got.
I just keep going. But you're talking about big ideas, and I think one of the things I'm frustrated by when I see small thinking from big entities. Like if you look at a government, you'd think that's a big thing, right? But actually, it's not. It's 150 individuals.
Yeah, you look at something like Google.
Yeah,
It's bigger than the government in a sense, surely.
it's much bigger than the government, and it's much more powerful. That's why these big tech firms are more powerful than governments.
They're taking over.
Yeah, but they don't need to take over.
I
They've
don't mean
already-
that, but you
Yeah,
meant
yeah.
they could though, couldn't they?
If they harness their power for the worsening of humanity and control purposes.
So if
you could
Jeff
argue, yeah.
Bezos just went, I'm a real fucking prick now. Like I'm just
It's not a
out
big
for,
stretch.
I'm out for evil gains.
Yeah.
Somebody with that much money and that much clout could be quite dangerous, couldn't they?
Well, somebody with that kind of clout, if not controlled, easily has the capacity to bend global events. If you've got that much money and that much power, you could argue that the rise of the billionaire through the last 20 years has been almost generated by lots of government thinking and lots of changes to society. And those people are immensely powerful. They have a huge responsibility. Some of them are altruistic. You see the ones that are less, let's say, on the...
Bill Gates gets it in the neck, doesn't he?
Well, I mean, he's on the Epstein Island passenger list, isn't he?
Yeah, he gets it in the neck, doesn't he?
Yeah, he gets in the neck.
I'm not saying he's good or bad. I'm throwing that thing out to you for you to give me something back. I don't know. You can talk about these subjects much more greatly. If
Probably going to get sued now.
you're not going to get sued because, hey, how can you?
My opinion.
Yeah, he gets a bit stickler, right?
Yeah, and, people who do big things often stand out, don't they? All of the great kings and conquerors and queens that have been
That was very
influential.
well put.
Well, they do get a lot of stick, and some of it rightly and some of it wrongly. There's a lot of things that are thrown at these very wealthy people that maybe aren't true. Maybe they are nice people. Maybe they just don't. Maybe they lack a vision. Maybe they don't understand the power they have. Maybe they're egotistical. Who knows? So
it does become quite obscene, doesn't it? When you think, how could you, like Amazon is like, for example.
Yeah.
Like that is huge. I find it like Facebook. I thought it's a bit like if Unbreakable being as big as Facebook and me going, because basically they see Instagram and go, yeah, that's fucking good, isn't it? Let's have it.
Yeah.
Oh, Snap, God, like live video. That wasn't on Facebook. That was some other platform. What platform invented live video, Mark? You might know. What was the first platform that had? Periscope.
Could
maybe.
well have been. Yeah, it's gone.
Oh, you can go
gone.
live. Facebook just went, oh yeah, we'll do that. It's just like, I will just have it. It's like me going, yeah, I'll buy that. That's a good company. Boom, boom, boom. I'm just going to keep bolting on everything they do until I am
the entity,
the thing.
Yeah. And if you sort of forward sort of project what a Facebook or a Google will look like in 20 years, if you think about the exponential growth, governments won't exist anymore because they'll be so small and insignificant against a Google that Google can just decide, right, I'm not doing what you want me to do. I'll do what I like. And there's really very little that you could do about it unless there's these strong regulations. And the regulations are only by consent.
Does that where we rely on the greater good?
Well, yeah.
But the greater good of a human being. You talk about things like off camera, we spoke about a history lesson about atomic bombs.
Yeah.
Let's be fair. Someone could just go drop one of them, couldn't they?
If they had the will and the capacity to do it, yeah.
Like nothing's stopping. Well, I don't say nothing's stopping, but do you know what I mean? If surely there comes a point where we just go, no, that we agree to these things. We don't do this as a humanity. You don't operate this way because it's going to be fucking
even
chaos.
From the early days, the Russians and the Americans had agreements that they were at war, but they weren't going to start the war. But if you did something to me, then I'll do something to you. So there was mutuality.
Like not a gentleman's agreement, but they are like gentleman's agreements, aren't they? They're like, hey, this is just not how we...
Yeah, look,
it's like sport sometimes. I'm trying to think where you go, we just wouldn't do that. That's a bit of a low blow, that. We wouldn't operate. You probably could get away with that, but we wouldn't do that.
Yeah, but you're not going to
That's not how we play the game.
You're not going to get a penalty for, for dropping a nuke on some country. It's going to be much worse. And I think, it's those agreements where, you could argue it's all phony, really.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's actually... all of us just going, hey, for the greater good of humanity. Let's not be a dick.
If Kennedy hadn't rung the Russian premier and said, look, mate, I'm not cool about this Cuban thing, we would have all died in a fireball because the top brass in the militaries were ready to press the button. And it came within minutes.
Yeah, I've read a whole few chapters of a book about those moments because Kennedy was actually quite a solid, if you read about his leadership style and stuff like that, quite
extremely straightforward, man.
Pioneering as well in many of the things that they operated. But it's mad. This whole thing about AI, I realize I'm just in aviation, but it's just the kind of stuff that interests me. But I don't want to make it about personal development, but sometimes I can't. It's that people getting on the same page with a shared goal for the betterment of something.
It can be local. It can be like 5 of you who just decide, right, we're going to clean up our neighbourhood.
We're going to improve our neighbourhood, because we've got a shared goal. Do you know, on my street, we're a bit of a remote street, really. I suppose it's not really a street. It's a bit of a weird thing. Mark's been there. It's kind of a street, but not really a street. It's like a lane, really, yeah. But
he wants to say he doesn't live in a posh house on a lane, but
No, I don't live in a posh house, but everyone in that street is in their 80s, pretty much. It's something in the water. Yeah. And once a month we have a coffee morning and we all go to someone's house.
It's fascinating.
It's the best. They're such cool people. And we go every time to coffee, take the kids. It's brilliant. But like that is a bit of a shared thing we do, like a share, and it makes living there so much better. Like, do you know what I mean? We're all on the same page where, I can borrow the strimmer from next door. I can do all this sort of stuff. And it's just,
it's your community.
It's a community, yeah. But I don't think it was always been a community, I suppose, because, a few old people died and then I moved in and somebody else died, so somebody else moved in. It's kind of created this strong, like you said,
we as young people, I use the word young in brackets.
We're much more insular, I think, as well.
Well, we've been taught to by society and by changes in society as they've gone through the last 20 years. And as our children have grown up, they don't get to experience what we experienced of running around in the woods and getting muddy and, half drowning in rivers and stuff. Yeah. Their worlds shrink, our worlds shrink, everything shrinks. I mean, I think back to living in Wiltshire, and I knew my neighbours by, my next door neighbour was fantastic and we knew her really well. But the next door neighbour beyond that, I didn't really know them. I knew their names maybe, or their second names, but I didn't know them.
Yeah. And we've spoken in previous episodes about our world's getting bigger. But actually what's got bigger is our online world.
Yeah. Facebook and WhatsApp is my social.
What's got smaller for a lot of people is our actual physical reality.
It's interesting, having moved sort of back into the country in Herefordshire, and moving on to a little kind of complex that was a load of farm buildings. Not only have we halved the average age in the area, but it is a fascinating community. Everybody from ex-parish councillors, there's a couple of ex-military guys.
But you know that already.
Yeah, we've met them, we've talked to them, we've had a barbecue with them.
Yeah, exactly. That's still that countryside mentality, I think. And older people like to get to know people. Yeah. Like you said, I think as younger people, we're guilty, not everyone, but we go to work, we come home, we're in our house, we do our shit, we off we go, oh, yeah, hi, it's the neighbour, off you go. Not like, hey, what they doing, where they at? You know,
I've got a grass mowing competition with my next door neighbour.
Yeah, but that's just taking it too far.
You laugh over the fence and you say, oh, yours is looking a bit long, you need to get that sorted, and it's actually a brilliant thing for the psyche, because you just feel like I'm not alone here.
Yeah, but shared communities. We talked about all the episodes, sharing information for the greater good of improving aviation. So having some kind of shared goal that, okay, even in the evil term of it, like, hey, let's not go too far here. This is where we're at as a humanity. We've got to control that. I was talking about the same level of impersonal development. It's like, imagine if everyone just, you notice that, what would happen if all the people in personal development, or people like me, rather than going, well, they're crap because, we're better than them. What if everyone's got on the same page? What are we all doing? What's working? What's not? Let's improve. And I know, go back to that path thing, like, that was me trying to standardize, just to try and see, like, can I standardize something that works? There's individuality in there. And like you said, everyone's going to have their journey and their ups and downs. But can we just have a straight line that they can always lean on? So by the end of 5 weeks, we can say, the average person drops anxiety by 80%. That's what we know. And it's because when you've got a standard line, you can...
Yeah, you can do that.
You can track, you can adjust, can't you? You know what you're doing.
I mean, I suppose, I'm not going to blow smoke towards Unbreakable on this, but, if you had a pathway.
Why not?
Well, I just don't want
to. I'm not going to be too nice to your son.
Yeah. I can't give you a free ride. If you think about, like, all the kids coming through the schools nowadays, if, they're being taught about things that we weren't taught about, because education has changed, and probably for the better. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it you could argue either way. But if everybody got together and agreed that generally people aren't taught enough about their own, having their beliefs challenged, and they're not taught the little things that would really help their lives and make them become rounded people. If you could agree across, and it's a bit like you're kind of Jamie Oliver doing the chicken nuggets thing, trying to get rid of them in schools. And, he faced like immense battles over chicken nuggets, for Christ's sake. Yeah. Imagine trying to install a system in education.
I love really shit chicken nuggets as well.
I do as well.
Just the shit ones.
The worst.
I don't think there's chicken in this.
If it's lips, if it's chicken,
white, I'm eating it.
If it's chicken's lips, I'm on it.
Yeah, I'm dipping it in tomato sauce, and it's actually for my kids, but he's got 5 now and I've got 6. Mark's like, I know the drill. I've done it. We've all been in there, haven't we? Yeah. But I know if everyone got on the same page, I think it would be. But actually, also the other thing I was coming back to in this is there needs to be a human element. But there is humans who need to, with all this tech, all this stuff, we need humans as well, surely, to know and how to, and that's one thing I keep in my own future plan. I'm like, there can never not be a human in our, like we have a Celeste, or we have, you can make that a bot, for example. But the human connection, I don't think you can replace that. For a while, I got out of doing so much coaching, and it felt a bit like, a bit sterile in my life. And the more I've got into speaking to people and hearing their journeys the last 6 months, you're like, this is what it's all about. This human to human connection. Surely tech can't replace that. Well, there must be something where I know, if I just know you're not a human.
I mean, I'm using a system called Flow, which is this kind of, I
The
suppose
neurofeedback.
neurofeedback.
Well, it's not
device.
neurofeedback, is it?
No, it's electrically stimulating your brain.
Yeah.
Now, for me, it's just been taken on by the NHS, and it's an interesting device. And I started using it primarily because its way of working is it's reconnecting the neural pathways in your brain.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And that's how it's helping to help people with depression, because that is a neural pathway issue. And, you can unlearn those neural pathways and you can create new ones, but it's a hard thing to do. And so this is kind of a cheat device, essentially. I thought, well, maybe this can kind of help grow a few pathways for my stroke damaged brain.
That's a logical idea.
Well, I was using it the other day and all of a sudden I could smell tobacco. Maybe that was the neural pathway for tobacco. I don't know.
Or maybe one of your kids is smoking. There's
a good chance they were smoking a pipe out.
Little 10-year-olds out of that. Okay.
Yeah, totally.
You're like, I could smell tobacco. She's like, brilliant, Dad. Well done.
No, it's honestly, like, all that brain stuff's fascinating. And I think, you could easily turn Unbreakable Pathway into an AI generated app. You could, get the coders on board. Yeah. They'd write themselves pretty much. You've already got most of the data. It could become essentially an online training course.
Yeah.
But you would miss all of those nuances where perhaps you'd said something in a live where you were explaining dopamine and why it was affecting certain things. And, it's
and
your
also
opinion.
Sometimes you just go, I haven't heard from Sally in a while. And you reach out and you say, Sally, and I'm sure they go, well, AI could do that. But if you know that it isn't a human, I think that's the thing. Like I said this in the previous episodes, when we were having all that chaos with the baby and everything, I always remember the main expert. There was two of them and they were arguing. Should this baby stay in? Should this baby go? Who's more important, the mum or the baby? It was just bouncing. You could see them. They went out the room, they come back in because it was an emergency. And he was talking to my wife and he held her hand. Mate, it only made me cry because he held her hand and you could see the sort of reassurance that it gave her, that human touch. And I'm sure that's his patter. He probably does do that. He probably got taught how to do that. Who knows? But also I was like, you know what? I'm just going to choose to believe.
No, they're really not taught that.
You're a human being and you've just seen this situation and you've reassured her through your tone and your touch, Tanner, it's going to be all right. And you've held her hand. I don't think you can replace that with tech, surely.
No, and I think there's this balance where the tech, and this is fascinating for engineering, it's fascinating for science and health and all the things that we've got coming in the future. There's this way of integrating the tech. So if you think about what a doctor learns when they become a doctor, essentially they're putting Google in their head. They're learning the 50 different ways you can get cancer. They're learning the 50 different pathways that a particular thing takes when it's in the body. And they're using their brain, which is a massive supercomputer, to sieve out the right choice. It's essentially a giant flowchart in their head.
Yeah, this is what we need to do here.
Yeah. So if you've got this type of cancer, current science says the way we treat this is X, Y, and Z, and you do these steps and on you go. Now, you could argue that you could automate that, and what will happen is that they will automate it. So you'll feed in your symptoms, or there'll be some sort of chemical sort of test or a system that they use. It will determine what you've got. It will then generate a treatment plan. Now, I doubt very much if you're just going to go into hospital and a robot's going to go, oh yeah, you've got this, and here you go, here's a pill. It's very much going to be automate the diagnosis,
but deliver
the human element.
Yeah, because I think you need that human elephant. I'm not joking. It reassured, it gave me a sense of, I can't even describe it.
It brings you back down to earth.
It gave me a sense of like, God, that's a human being. Like it's a connection that felt meaningful and reassuring.
After my stroke, I was incredibly emotional. I couldn't straighten a thought to save my life. And a lady walked in and she just, again, held my hand. And she looked me in the eye and she said, you're going to be all right.
Yeah, you just need to hear it, don't you?
Yeah, it makes me well up.
Yeah, but it is like, that can't be replaced in tech, I don't think.
No. There's no way a robot's going to wheel itself in and go, you're going to be all right, mate. You're going to just go, yeah, all right, mate, whatever.
I think like another human being, don't you? Heart to heart, in a sense. But imagine when human beings all get on the same page for the greater good.
We sound like the Beatles, mate. Imagine all the people.
Imagine all the people, but for the greater good, towards a common shared goal.
Yeah.
That moves mountains.
And it has done over the history of the world. Hasn't it?
Yeah. And what a thing. And I think sometimes you don't have to have this bigger kind of macro look at it. Like you said, sometimes it can just be your household.
Yeah.
How often are our households not on the same page with shared goals? A shared goal isn't this is where we're going.
No.
Shared goal is where are we going?
It's not dictated.
Where are we going?
You asked me to start putting in my family meetings. We've only had a couple so far, and they've been fascinating.
Yeah. What do you want? What do you need from me?
My 2 teenage daughters like just unleashing us with information that we had no clue about. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we could facilitate that in your life.
Yeah.
But it's a game changer, isn't it? When you sit down with your family and just go, like a team at work, you'd do it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You sit down with your team, right, guys? We got what we doing, what we got. At home, we're just like, yeah, we're all individuals just bashing around.
Yeah, and you could easily live your life like that and never really connect with the people that are important to you. And, like you read it so many times and it's a trope about, you only get 12 Christmases or 18 Christmases or only 18 kind of birthdays and you only get those opportunities. And I think Dave Watson mentioned it when he talked to you, about missing years of his kids' lives and coming back to it and realizing just what he'd missed out on, Yeah. It's been the same for me because I've had those challenges too.
I think I picked up on it, my life course early, and I had kids late.
Yeah.
So I hopefully don't feel like I'm going to look back and go, fuck me, where was I for 10 years? Luckily.
You were lucky to have a foundation of inner confidence and strength to be able to take on what is a very difficult challenge.
I'd kind of, had to go through a lot of stuff to myself and then went, oh, okay, I've got a family now, rather than I've got a family. It's highlighted. Fuck, I'm a mess. I need to sort this out.
Can you imagine going and having
the right way around?
Yeah, imagine going and having your kids in the place you were when you were 19
or 28.
Yeah, and I know people that were faced with that. A good friend of mine had his first child very, very young, and hugely challenging. Kind of,
Yeah. Well, adding another element of pressure to. An already pressurized system.
It's hard enough, isn't it?
Yeah. It's hard enough just navigating your life, let alone having other people to navigate your life. But shared goals, community, I love all that. I love all that shit. I love that story about the aviation industry.
Back to me having my no.
Yeah. And I love that. I just do. Because that for me it's a bit like when, was it Volvo created, did they invent the seatbelt? Was it Volvo?
Yeah, and they
just went, have this because it's going to save loads of lives. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, you could have easily just kept the design and never released it. Yeah. Greater good. There we go. So between Oxbow Lakes and the Greater Good, we're doing well.
I'm trying to think of some stuff from Hot Fuzz. Policeman officer.
Policeman officer.
I'm going to go and watch Hot Fuzz. Actually, I'm going to call out a client of mine. I think it was, she knows who she is. Didn't like Hot Fuzz. I went, you need to go watch Hot Fuzz this week. Chill out. I didn't like it. I was like, right, that's it.
You're gone.
You're out.
My favourite line by all of it is the battle of Summerfields, and it's when he goes, "What's the situation?" and she goes, "2 blokes and a fuckload of cutlery."
It's in Gloucester, that shot.
It's Wells, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely, kind of amazing.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I love that. It was interesting. It was insightful, and actually really applicable.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, you go steady.
Thanks, mate.
See you, folks.